Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores a goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Soccer Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Lucas Moore, and we want to welcome you back to the GSMC Soccer Podcast, those of you that have been fans in the past, and we want to welcome all the new fans to the show. Please give us a follow on Twitter, GSMC_soccer. Follow our Facebook page, GSMC Soccer Podcast, and give me a follow on Twitter. That's at MooreLukas, MooreLukas. Pretty simple, pretty easy. I know the K is a little weird, but it's the German spelling, and we like the German spelling because, hey, this is a soccer podcast, and soccer a little bit more popular in the country of Germany than the United States. And what I mean by popular means they're better at it, and their league is a bit better. But not in terms of raw players or participation. And that takes us into our first topic of the day. Don't worry, we've got a lot to get into in the show. We have some transfer news from Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga. We're going to talk Cristiano Ronaldo and Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Opposite performances to start the new year from those two superstars in the same league. And I think that one has made a horrible mistake, and one has set themselves up to potentially being the greatest of all time. You can go ahead and assume which one is which there. We've got a lot to dive into in today's show. But where I wanted to start was with the United States men's national team. We know that this is arguably the most disappointing sports team in the United States. Bottom line, I really do believe that. The United States missing the World Cup in 2018 was the most disappointing, unbelievably shocking result, I think, in American sports in a long, long time. It's up there with the 28-3 comeback in the Super Bowl, the Atlanta Falcons debacle. It's right there. Because let me flash you back to 2018. Jurgen Klinsmann's tenure was coming to an end as that qualifying run just before 2018 was wrapping up. And Jurgen Klinsmann was canned. Bruce Arena takes over to save the qualification because they were off to a rough start in qualification. And Bruce Arena straightens the ship a bit. It was mainly Christian Pulisic that was straightening the ship for the United States, essentially carrying that team through each of these qualifying matches. But they get to a match where all they need to do is draw or beat Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago. Let me talk to you about Trinidad and Tobago. When I started to explain to friends who were asking me, the soccer guy, why on earth the United States didn't qualify for the 2018 World Cup, I said, well, because we couldn't beat Trinidad and Tobago. Oh, I thought Trinidad and Tobago were two separate countries. I didn't know that's the same thing. That was the common response to that question. They lost that match, and they didn't qualify for the World Cup. They didn't qualify out of CONCACAF. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And some people in the United States will say many things. They'll say, well, we're just not as good at soccer or athletes, whatever. We just don't care as much. But I really don't believe that. I really believe that the United States can be the best at any sport it chooses to be the best at if it does its development properly. I really do believe that. We've had elite tennis players. We've had elite, what are we? We win every gold medal in the Olympics. Sprinters, pole vaulters, all these different sports that are less popular in the United States than the sport of soccer. The United States has found a way to be the best in the world at, or one of the 5 best countries in the world at. Well, then you say, well, Lucas, the rest of the world cares so much about soccer. That is true. Yeah, I know that's true. But the rest of the world also cares about all these other sports too. And the United States still finds a way to be at least one of the 10 best countries in each of these sports. And the reason the United States often finds that way is because it is an extremely large, athletically focused country. Sports is king in the United States. Our politics system in the United States revolves around the sport model. Red versus blue, this team, that team, races, presidential races, who's ahead, who's behind, who's going to quit, right? Sports is central in the United States. And that is why sport after sport, time after time, there are great athletes within that sport. It's also because this is the largest economy the world has ever seen in the United States. That means that each of these sports is going to be much better funded than most other sports are funded in all these other countries. And the same is true for the sport of soccer. The same thing is true. We spend over $1 billion a year in soccer in this country. We have 4.1 million registered soccer players in the United States. That is more than the population of the team the United States couldn't even beat to qualify for the World Cup, Trinidad and Tobago. That's more people than a team that was in the World Cup final in Croatia. These are real numbers. So why on earth can't the United States figure itself out? It's because it's horrendous leadership. I don't want to hear these things, well, the culture's just not good enough. Imagine if all the United States' best athletes played soccer. I get that point, and it wouldn't even be fair if LeBron James and all these guys decided to play soccer instead. I don't think it would be fair. But I think the United States has plenty of elite athletes, enough of elite athletes to be competitive at the highest levels in this game, to at least be one of the 15 best countries in the world at soccer without even trying, because of the money that's spent into it, because of the highly successful. It is a highly successful. You compare the numbers, attendance in MLS, money that's brought in through television. It is a highly successful domestic league, one of the top 8 leagues in the world in soccer, right? All these things combined, and yet the United States keeps stepping on its own toes because they have horrendous leadership. And frankly, it's just the most embarrassing sport federation in the United States. It's awful. So Jurgen Klinsmann comes out with a controversial statement this week and said that if he were still the manager of the team, not only would the U.S. have qualified for the 2018 World Cup, but they could have been in the quarterfinal or even the semifinals under Jurgen Klinsmann. Do I believe this? I don't know. Jurgen had that team shaky. A lot of bad things went into the Jurgen Klinsmann hiring. It was a bad relationship between him and the leadership of the United States Federation. It just felt bad. It felt like this thing was headed where it headed the whole time, especially when you look back at it. So I'm not sure I believe Jurgen Klinsmann's statement, but I think that he would have at least got the team through qualifying. And I think Bruce Arena, who wouldn't even take blame for this whole debacle after it ended, needs to look himself in the mirror and understand that this is a national embarrassment, what happened in the qualifying round for the 2018 World Cup. And it's not even something that you can redeem yourself for, because the next World Cup, the field is expanded. And if the United States can't find a way to qualify, when 6 teams will make it out of CONCACAF to the new expanded 48-team World Cup. If you can't qualify in a region with Canada and Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago and Costa Rica and all these tiny little island nations that are barely the size of the city of Chicago, if you can't find a way to qualify as a top 6 team in CONCACAF, well, then we might as well just stop playing this sport at an international level. So there's not even really a chance for the United States to redeem themselves. They will qualify for the next World Cup. It is borderline impossible for them to not. And that's what makes 2018 so hard to swallow. Because the United States had gotten on a run where they were a guaranteed qualifier, and oftentimes in the round of 16. And now they are not that. Now they are something different than that. And it's just going to make everybody nervous heading into the World Cup. It's going to make us tight and, And it's going to be stressful the entire way through because we don't know how good this United States team is. My point is, it should be much better than it has been. And frankly, the fact that they haven't been able to figure this whole thing out, the fact that this was a federation that made the quarterfinals in 2002 and was a brilliant Oliver Kahn performance away from being a semifinalist in South Korea in 2002. They went from that to not even being able to qualify out of CONCACAF. It's a drastic change, and it's an embarrassing change. We'll go ahead and step aside, and I'll be a little more positive about the United States men's national team on the other side of the break. You're listening to the GSMC Soccer Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
All right, we just talked about the United States men's national team. Jurgen Klinsmann says he would have been able to take that team had he been allowed to stay through qualification. Not only would he have brought them to the World Cup in Russia, he would have been able to bring them to the semifinals, is something that Jurgen Klinsmann is claiming. Well, worry about making Hertha Berlin relevant again. Do that first, Jurgen. I respect Jurgen Klinsmann, and I like what he did with the German national team, and I'd want to believe his statement, but at the same time, I read way too many articles about how much of a debacle his tenure was, especially near the end, and the poor relationships with him and leadership, and I just don't think that would have happened. Maybe they would have qualified. Maybe they would have actually showed up and played a match and, tied Trinidad and Tobago, which I couldn't even point that thing out to you on a map. I don't think most people could. I know it's in CONCACAF. So perhaps in the Caribbean? I don't know, and I'm not even going to look it up. It's an unbelievable embarrassment what happened there. But I promised we would be more positive in this segment about the United States men's national team. A little later in the show, we'll dive into Cristiano Ronaldo, Manchester United. What are they now? How should we think of them? Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Dive into Bayern Munich a bit. And they made a big signing, and I have a theory about how they should approach their manager position moving forward. That comes at the end of the show. But right now, let's be a little more positive about the United States men's national team. I think this is a really important point, is that it feels hopeless right now. And I get that. It's like when you have a really bad night. Take you back to college or high school. And you do really, really poorly on a test, makes it feel like that class is going to be impossible, and that every single test moving forward, you will do just as poorly. But we all know, at least those of us that made it through high school and or college, not saying you need to make it through college to be intelligent, but if you just study a little harder, change your tactic, you're going to be able to turn around. You'll be able to take the test again, and you'll probably be able to pass it. And the United States has been presented with a really interesting opportunity over the next 2 World Cup cycles. Is Greg Berhalter, the current manager of the United States men's national team, is he the guy that'll be able to carry the United States to the place that I want them to go? I'm not sure about that, but he'll have a chance to prove it. So first things first, they need to do the very easy task. I mean, very simple task. It's honestly... It's easier than a layup in basketball, what the United States needs to accomplish moving forward, and that is qualifying for the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. I think that is an easy qualification because 6 CONCACAF teams will make it. It is a 48-team tournament, and if the United States, I'm just not even going to entertain the thought. So first step, qualify. Think they'll get that done. 99% sure they'll get that step done. So first step for them, qualify. Second step, 2022. And I think this is possible. This is a good young roster. Pulisic is going to be starting to move into the beginning portions of his prime. He'll be, let me do the math here quick. He'll be 22 years old, 23 years old. You've got a lot of other really young, talented players that are starting to succeed throughout Europe, that are starting to succeed at high levels in the MLS. The play in the MLS is getting better and better. I think this will be the most talented United States men's national team ever. I think better than the 2002 team, better than the 2010 team, better than the 2014 team. I think this would definitely be the most talented United States team ever. Now, what does talent mean? You need a right culture. You need a good system. You need all those things to be successful and win World Cups. Just ask the Germans. But I think that they'll have the most talent they've ever had. In 2022, the goal is just get out of your 3-team group. So for those of you that don't know, the World Cup is going to be completely restructured. And it's going to be 16 groups of 3 teams each. And the top 2 teams from each group make it to the round of 32. And you play knockout from there. This favors a country like the United States. Because they're going to be placed in a group with probably one power. So a Germany, an Argentina, a Spain, etc. Brazil, Croatia, maybe. One power. Then the United States will be that middling team. And then most likely the other team in their group, it might be even a country we've never seen in the World Cup before because the field is expanded to 48. So you're going to have a win, guaranteed. You win that game. You play close with the elite team. You move on to the round of 32. Not too difficult. I think that is the minimum expectation for me for the United States in the 2022 World Cup. Play in that round of 32. See what happens from there. Be competitive. If they lose in the first round, sure. But I think this team's talented enough to make a round of 16, perhaps even a quarterfinal run in this type of format if things align, right? If you get the right matchup, they certainly could be a round of 16 team. So that's step 1. Step 2, continue all the positive things that have been United States soccer over the previous years, right? Which aren't many, but there have been some. The domestic leagues are growing. Youth levels are growing. Talent is growing. There's more prodigies time and time again from the United States. So keep all that stuff up. And in 2026, this is what I think is going to happen. And bear with me here. I've said this to a few people. Christian Pulisic, who, in my opinion, by the end of his career will be the greatest American soccer player, and it won't even really be close. At that time, will be 26 years old. Yeah, it's a really good age. 26. Now, not only will he be 26, but the collection of other young players that are about his age that don't exactly have the big name, Weston McKennie, Tim Way, these guys will be also 25, 26, 27. This is prime athleticism, peak athleticism for these United States athletes. This is a really good sign. This means that the 2026 team should be 1.5 times, 1.8 times more talented than the 2022 team I mentioned, which I think will be the most talented United States team in history. And in 2026, the United States is hosting the World Cup, along with Mexico and Canada, but it's 90% in the United States. And we know what hosting a World Cup can do for you. Momentum heading into it, all those things. You'll also have a great collection of probably new prodigies, a new Pulisic, 18, 19, 20, 21. I really do believe the 2026 team will be one of the best 10 soccer teams in the world. And if they get the right manager and they get the right draw in a tournament where you're only going to have to win one game to advance to the round of 32 and you play knockout from there, Don't tell me that the United States can't be in the World Cup final in 2026. And I know most of you are laughing right now. I've been laughed at every time I've said this. I've said this even after they failed to qualify for 2018. But they're hosting. They'll be the most talented team in history. They'll have a legitimate superstar and I think a couple other borderline stars frontlining their team. And if leadership can just figure this thing out, heading into 2026, you're telling me a round of 16 home match in the middle of the country, let's say a city like Chicago, 70,000 Americans cheering on a World Cup round of 16? We know Americans love the World Cup. Even those who don't like soccer love the World Cup, especially if it's here. And I think that the United States can string together wins. And I think the United States, let's put it this way, if they're ever going to win a World Cup, it's going to be in 2026. And that's a pipe dream. Maybe you can say that. But I have an expectation, and it would not be successful. No run in 2026 would be successful unless the United States is playing in the semifinal. They need to be playing in the semifinal. And I think they're good enough to do it. That's my positive take on the United States. I really do think they'll be talented enough. I think the United States has the raw athletes. I just think soccer needs to get embedded a little bit more. And it's still growing. And I know 2018 hurt. But don't let the one failed test keep you from believing that you can pass the next one. So I believe in the United States moving forward. Somebody I don't really have belief in anymore, Manchester United. We'll talk about them, where they rank in the Premier League, and should we have the same expectations for Manchester United moving forward? That comes next on the GSMC Soccer Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back into the show. GSMC Soccer Podcast. Just talked the United States men's national team. I think that they'll have an opportunity to win the World Cup in 2026. You can laugh, but come talk to me in 6 years, and maybe I'll be right, or maybe I'll be horrifically wrong. Hopefully I'm right. Just get in the World Cup 2022. Win a couple games, please. That's all I want. Make sure to give us a follow, GSMC_soccer on Twitter. Hit us up with that follow for new podcasts, retweets of soccer pages, etc., etc. Same thing on Facebook, GSMC Soccer. And follow me, friend me, Lukas Moore the name, More Lukas on Twitter. That's Lukas with a K, Moore. But let's dive in to somebody else that's been disappointing recently. And really it's been a disappointing decade. That is Manchester United. So I want to take you back to when I was first being introduced to club soccer, because at the very first breath of my soccer fandom, I was visiting Germany once a year. I have family in Germany, technically a German citizen, but I have family over there in Germany. And I'd visit and we'd talk international soccer, and I was 4, 5, 6. I never really latched on to club soccer because it wasn't popular at all in the United States at the time. This was around 2003, 2004. Not at all popular in the United States, club soccer. It wasn't something that I was really interested in at all. I was interested in international soccer, right? We were leading into the 2006 World Cup. 2002 had just happened. It felt like international soccer was just what I enjoyed at the time. And it's all I really understood. Though, as much as a 5 or 6 year old can understand sports, right? And so I was all about international soccer, international soccer, international soccer. Until I saw a Manchester United ball on sale at a Walmart in Springfield, Ohio, in the middle of America. The only soccer balls they sold were Manchester United balls. And when you go back to the middle of, it's not the previous decade, 2 decades ago. Oh my Lord, I'm old. But if you go back to the mid-aughts, right, 2004, 5, 6, I don't even know what we're going to call those. 2010s, 2000s, I guess. Manchester United was top of the world. They were the most popular, the most successful, the most respected, the most feared, everything in soccer. They were at the top of the world. And in the 14 years since that time, what are they now? I mean, Manchester United just got embarrassed in the EFL Cup. I'm not going to call it the Carabao Cup or whatever they're calling it. I'm against this. I don't know. It's the English Football League Cup. That's the way I understand it. I just don't want to call it the Carabao Cup. And I get I just don't want to do it. That's a discussion for another day. But they got absolutely throttled, bounced, manhandled, shaken around by Manchester City, their arch rival. Can you believe that? 3-1. It wasn't even close. You turn that match on, it looked like a top of the table Premier League team against a team that was battling against relegation. That's what that looked like. And I get Manchester United had injuries and all these excuses that they continue to throw out. But they just looked bad. They were boring. They were uninteresting. And to me, it made me really sit and think, because I continued to respected Manchester United even up until last year. I know they'd have been down, but I'm like, look, Manchester City came out of nowhere. Premier League got better. They just need to adjust. They still have that culture. They're still a championship type team. But no, they're not. Let's lower expectations of Manchester United, because to me, they aren't one of the best 5 Premier League organizations, Premier League clubs. I mean, can you really say that they're one of the best 5? Liverpool's clearly better at the time, not just a better team, but a better club all around. They just had a huge deal with Nike. I think they're more popular in the world, right? Manchester City, clearly a better club at this point. Chelsea's a better club. And then you can throw out a bunch of random teams that have just been better over the past 3 or 4 years, better in not just soccer, but better at everything as a club. Like signings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, I think we should lower our expectations for Manchester United and understand that this is not the Manchester United of 2000 to 2006. They're just not that team. I mean, these Premier League finishes are awful. The last time they won the league, 2012-13, 7th, 4th, 5th, 6th, 2nd, 6th. Are you kidding me? I mean, and I just think that this is the expectation for Manchester United from this point forward. They haven't been competitive in the Champions League. They have some star talent. You know, they've had Zlatan, Wayne Rooney, Lukaku. I like Lukaku. They make big signings, but they never really work. And I just don't think they have the same clout. And I think the Premier League is too competitive at the top, especially with a team in your own city, that is just taking all your juice. And I think that Manchester United needs to be put in that same boat that, you know, we've placed Liverpool in. Now, I know Liverpool hasn't won since 1990, but they'll take care of business this year. And we can then put them in the same boat that Liverpool is in. The days of Sir Alex Ferguson are gone. And Manchester United is going to be a team that will win the Premier League once every about 4 years. They'll be competitive in the Champions League once in a blue moon. And if they maybe get the right manager, maybe they can have a 2 or 3 year run. Same place Liverpool's in. Same place Manchester City's in. Same place Chelsea's in. They are no longer the royalty of the Premier League. And the performance in the EFL Cup proved that. They looked awful. And they've lost all their juice. And as an organization, when you lose all your juice, it's difficult to bounce back from that. It's something that is really difficult to wrap your head around, even if you're a Manchester United fan. The fact that this happened so quickly after a championship in 13. You fast forward 7 years later, and you're struggling to qualify for Europe year in, year out in the Premier League. And I just think that's the reality now for Manchester United. A sad reality indeed for United fans. But you know what? At least you're one of those top 6 teams of the Premier League. It's a good place to be sitting. It's a good place to be competitive in. But they're not even the best in Manchester. And that's just the truth of it all. Former Manchester United player Cristiano Ronaldo notched himself a hat trick. He's got an excellent goal record. We know that. He's Cristiano Ronaldo. We'll talk about him and another worldwide superstar, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, on the other side of the break. You're listening to the GSMC Soccer Podcast.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back into the GSMC Soccer Podcast. I'm your host, Lucas Moore. We talked Manchester United, their disappointments. We talked United States men's national team, their disappointments, but my hope for their future. I want to remind you to give us a follow, GSMC_soccer on Twitter, GSMC Soccer on Facebook for all your great soccer content and, all those goodies, all those good things. See when the episodes are posted, etc., etc. Let's talk about Cristiano Ronaldo. Another hat trick for him, this time Juventus. First hat trick for Juventus in Serie A play. He's now had a hat trick, and I'm going to try to name it off the top of my head. The Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, the European Championships, World Cup, and that's just the start of the list because you start to add in all these different tournaments that these teams played in. Champions League, he has a hat trick in. It's just unbelievable. He is becoming the most deadly in-the-box goal scorer of all time. And I am just in awe of Cristiano Ronaldo. And I remember a few years ago when the Ronaldo versus Messi debate really heated up. I was on the Ronaldo side of things. I prefer his style. He's big, he's strong, he's fast. It comes off his foot hard. He's athletic, he's physical. Not that Messi isn't all those things, but Ronaldo embodies that more so than Messi ever did. And to me, I just always preferred Ronaldo. And Ronaldo, success at Real Madrid. Three-peat in the Champions League. I mean, just time and time again, winning trophies with Real Madrid, scoring goals, but still falling to Messi most of the time in La Liga. And I think Ronaldo made it a very calculated decision and a good decision to say, hey, maybe I should get away from this Messi guy. I think Barcelona's got a little bit better structure around him, and they just seem to do better against the worst teams in La Liga. Let me make a change later in my career. It might be a risk. Some people might call it a risk, but to me, it will set myself up, I'm talking as Ronaldo here, for an opportunity to become the, no doubt, definitive greatest of all time. And there's a lot of Messi fans and Maradona fans and some German Franz Beckenbauer fans who are going to be screaming at the top of their lungs about this. But to me, Ronaldo has set himself up with Juventus, if he can accomplish one thing, to potentially be the greatest of all time. And his legacy won't be hurt if he never does this at Juventus, and he'll still be one of the best 5 players that's ever had an opportunity to touch a soccer ball at a professional level. But the one thing that he could do at Juventus that to me would solidify him as the GOAT, right, is win that Champions League. Take a trophy to Juventus in the Champions League. Beat the seemingly unstoppable Liverpool. Beat Manchester City out for it. Beat Bayern Munich, the German Giants, out for it. Beat your old team, Real Madrid, out for it. Beat Messi and Barcelona out for it. That would be greatest of all time status. Because now he would have been a significant player in 3 separate leagues, not just a significant player, arguably the best player in 3 separate major leagues. He will have won, I believe, 5 Champions League titles, a European title, and he's made Portugal consistently relevant in world soccer, which, they've been relevant here and there, but they've never been as relevant as they are with Ronaldo. And Ronaldo's success in the international level has been questioned at times, but to me, he's been excellent in a lot of matches. And to me, it's hard to get Portugal to the place you want him to go. Meanwhile, Messi has a consistent World Cup finalist team, Argentina. Argentina is a World Cup power, and he can't win the World Cup with them. So to me, I think Ronaldo honestly has the edge in international play. Then he would pass Messi clearly with Champions League. And then if he goes and dominates Serie A the way he is, Juventus wins a title there, which is a sure thing. To me, it's just, how are you going to argue with this? How are you going to argue against Ronaldo with the numbers of goals that he's going to put up by the time his career ends, the number of assists that he'll put up by the time his career ends, the highlights, the branding, the merchandising, just all across the board? It becomes really difficult to argue against Cristiano Ronaldo as one of the greatest players, if not the greatest player, to ever live. And I really hope he accomplishes it. I really hope that he's able to just drag Juventus. Now, Juventus is a talented team. You're not necessarily dragging, but you know what I mean. Take Juventus, lead Juventus to a Champions League title. Oh boy, that'd be fun. That's greatness right there, right? Did it so much with Real Madrid time and time again, coming up in the biggest spots, in the biggest tournament in the world. A big stage player. If he does it again with another team in another country, I think that makes him the greatest of all time. And he's such an enamoring figure, Cristiano Ronaldo. He plays with such power, yet grace. And it's just this beautiful mix of soccer, speed and cutting ability, and the ability to place the ball wherever he wants on his shot, combined with the ability to rip it harder than I think most humans on the planet can. It's just beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful way to play soccer, and especially as somebody who grew up watching a lot of an American-style soccer, I really appreciate the way he plays. And to me, I really hope that he's able to do this, because I just think his image, his branding, I just like it all better than Lionel Messi. And I like it better than, I really don't have much respect for Diego Maradona. So I'd really like for Ronaldo to do this so that I can say more than just with my heart, but also my brain, that he is the greatest soccer player of all time. And that's really my hope for Cristiano Ronaldo moving forward, that he becomes the greatest soccer player of all time. Juventus, one of the upper tier favorites, but they've got a difficult path in front of them. I think it's possible. I think they're more due for a semifinal run in this whole thing, obviously depending on the draw. But even that would be impressive. It wouldn't solidify him as the greatest of all time, but it would be a feat that he's proud of, should be proud of, and is impressed by. And I'm just excited for this Champions League draw, which I wanted to touch on just shortly before we head into the break and before we talk about Zlatan Ibrahimovic. The Champions League round of 16. This is the first time in Champions League history that the round of 16 will feature 16 teams from the major 5 leagues. So no offshoot league has found a way to get a team into the round of 16 for the Champions League. It is the major 5, the big 5. And to me, that's exciting. And when we take a look through the draw, I want to go match by match or matchup by matchup and just kind of discuss them a little bit. Because we want to start with Atletico Madrid and Liverpool. To me, this is Liverpool all the way. Atletico, obviously, they're a nice team in Spain, but to me, it's just Liverpool is playing at such a high level with such a brilliant manager in Jurgen Klinsmann that it's hard for me to imagine Liverpool not winning that tie. Then you have Dortmund and PSG. PSG is the favorite here, but Dortmund, for the first time in a long time, really choosing not to sell here. They're going to hold on to some pieces in January. I like the direction Dortmund always goes. They're one of the best teams in Germany, but PSG is without a doubt the favorite there. Valencia should handle business against Atalanta, which is their first time in the round of 16 in a very long time. But that one is an upset to watch, I think, in the round of 16. Tottenham, RB Leipzig. Is Harry Kane going to be healthy for the matchup on February 19th? That's the big-time question, because if he's not, I don't think that Spurs will have enough to overcome the Germans in RB Leipzig. Chelsea, Bayern, that sounds like an even matchup, but Bayern Munich went 6 for 6 in the Champions League group stage. I like what Hansi Flick's doing. We will talk about Bayern at the end of the show. I think they'll win that tie. Barcelona should handle Napoli. Juventus should blow Olympique Lyon right off the field. It really shouldn't be close. And then the most intriguing matchup of the round of 16, Real Madrid, Manchester City. This just feels like a tie that Pep Guardiola loses, right? And Real Madrid, a highly talented team. They certainly could knock out Manchester City. It just feels like Manchester City, they win the Premier League last year by a near record margin at 98 points. Not by record margin, but record point total at 98. And this year, they're just a little disappointing off the start. They were the betting favorites to start, and they just seem to always disappoint in big matchups like this, especially in European competition. And I just think Real Madrid will be able to carry the day in that one. Awesome round of 16 coming up in the Champions League. We will dive all into those matchups on the Monday before the first Wednesday of those matchups. That comes up in February, but I wanted to just touch on those matchups because the Champions League to me is the center of European club soccer, especially for us here in the United States. Most of you, I'm assuming, listening in the United States, if not, ignore this. But for us in the United States, it's really the Super Bowl of European soccer because each of these individual leagues are, one, extremely hard to follow day in, day out. Two, they're often won by the same team. I mean, Germany has been dominated by Bayern Munich this entire decade. Last time Juventus lost to Italian title, I couldn't even tell you. In Barcelona, Real Madrid are always winning in Spain. So this is the time for the best clubs in the world to compete in a tournament that changes hands often, has a couple dominant teams. There's surprise teams that make their way up there. It's a beautiful tournament. It's a tournament that I just absolutely love to talk about, and it will really be the center of our show every time that these matchups come up week in, week out, through the month of February, March, April, moving into summer. And then we'll have the European Championships. It'll be a great time on the GSMC Soccer Podcast. What won't be a great time? Zlatan's time in AC Milan. It did not start well for Ibrahimovic, and I'll tell you why. He probably just made the biggest mistake of his career on the other side of the break. You're listening to the GSMC Soccer Podcast.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back into the GSMC Soccer Podcast. Give us a follow, social media. I've mentioned it a few times in the show. Just got done discussing Cristiano Ronaldo and the Champions League, and I want to move into another superstar. This one a little bit older, not nearly as successful, but still a superstar nonetheless, Zlatan Ibrahimovic. I had fallen in love with Zlatan when he came to the United States for LA Galaxy. I loved his attitude. I love his cockiness. I knew that he could back it up in the MLS because he's one of the greatest target men of all time. He didn't need to run a bunch. He could stand, receive, distribute, and score. That was his job as the LA Galaxy. 52 goals in 56 matches. Excellent player. Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Loved watching him play. And I thought that he was going to be a mainstay in Major League Soccer until he decided to retire, because who on earth wouldn't want to score goals easily in a league where you're going to be playing in front of 20 to 70,000 people every single week, which is about the same you're going to see in Italy with AC Milan, which is where he ended up going. And you get to live in Los Angeles and be a superstar at the center of a really beautiful, budding LA versus LA rivalry with Carlos Vela, Bob Bradley, and LAFC. I just really was excited for that matchup, and I thought it'd be a great way for somebody to end their career. And it's really one of those rare opportunities that these major superstar soccer players have to actually play in a lower league and yet still be respected for it, still earn a bunch more new fans, still be able to dominate, and be playing in front of thousands upon thousands of people, have billions of social media followers, have your highlight. It just, the MLS is a serviceable league. That's not available to guys like Tom Brady. There's no minor league football team or a pitcher that wears out in Major League Baseball. They're not going to go to AAA and live out the glory days there. To me, it was a beautiful opportunity for Zlatan to be a superstar, to score goals in a major, major market in Los Angeles, California, and win games and be a star. Instead, he makes the decision, which just absolutely blew my mind, makes the decision to go to AC Milan, who is currently 12th in their own league, cannot get out of their own way, and will not be able to get a 38-year-old target man the ball. So, Zlatan, you're better to be able to find some youthful energy and start to run around and get the ball for yourself, because you are not going to get a lot of opportunities to score. And you're playing against, most of the time, better defenders than you were in the MLS. And to me, you're going to while away in, frankly, irrelevance in Italy. Instead of being this superstar in Los Angeles, helping soccer grow in an area, scoring a lot of goals, now you're going to lose a lot of matches, not score a lot of goals, and not be a superstar other than the fact that you're Zlatan, which that's a really important point. He is Zlatan. Zlatan is Zlatan. Los Angeles asked for Zlatan, and you got Zlatan, is what he said. And I love all that stuff. And he's still going to be massively popular just because he's Zlatan, but this is by no means going to elevate his career. I don't think he's going to score much. I think he's going to be ineffective. I don't think he makes AC Milan better at all. In fact, he might start to lose minutes. Then is he going to come back to the MLS? This just was a mistake all across the board. And the cockiness thing, it doesn't work when you're not scoring. People don't want to listen to that when you suck. People don't want to hear you talk when you suck. The bottom line. If someone's talking trash, but they're really good, you kind of almost respect it. Like, man, that guy's really good. He's telling me how good he is. He's telling me he's going to beat me, and then he beats me. But if you're talk, cocky, I'm the best in the world, talking third person, all that crap, and you're unable to get out of your own way with AC Milan, you're unable to score, 38-year-old target man that is not going to receive any targets, just doesn't work. Doesn't work as well. It's a bad PR move. Doesn't sound as good. Doesn't roll off the tongue as well. Isn't as fun. And I think Zlatan has just made an unbelievably horrible mistake by deciding to move away from Major League Soccer. And I think that Cristiano Ronaldo should take a look at what Zlatan just did and understand that his reversal here is something that Cristiano Ronaldo should take advantage of when he is 38, 39. Because Cristiano Ronaldo, by the time he's 38, 39, the MLS will have grown even more. There will be plenty of major media markets for Ronaldo to choose from. And who doesn't want to live in Los Angeles or New York, in their late 30s as an international superstar? I think Cristiano Ronaldo will consider the MLS. I think he'll see the success that Zlatan had. But the difference between Zlatan and Ronaldo is I just feel like Ronaldo calculates things a little bit more. I feel like he's a little better with his business. And I think that if he made the move to the MLS at age 37, 38, he would just ride it out. 2 years, turn 40, score a lot of goals, maybe win an MLS Cup, gain more fan base in the United States, maintain that fan base, leave on a good note, retire there. That's my career. I really hope that's what Ronaldo elects to do. And I thought that's what Zlatan was going to do. And I thought it was going to be a brilliant exit for a brilliant player who dominated in all the leagues in the world, who has some of the most famous goals in modern soccer history. Remember the bicycle kick of the World Cup when he was playing for, oh my Lord, that was so famous. And instead, he's just going to be an average striker in an average league on an average team. And to me, that's boring and disappointing. And unfortunate that Zlatan has chosen this path, and unfortunate that Zlatan will be Zlatan, but old Zlatan. No longer effective Zlatan. Poor Zlatan. Actually, you know what? He's made plenty of money. No poor Zlatan. Poor Hansi Flick, probably, though. Hansi Flick, the manager of Bayern Munich, will he be able to hang around after this season? I've got a couple ideas on that, a couple thoughts on that, and more about the German defending champions and potentially future champions on the other side of the break. You are listening to the GSMC Soccer Podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back into the GSMC Soccer Podcast. Just talked Cristiano Ronaldo, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, the mistake I thought Zlatan made. And there's no real transition here because this is why this is at the end of the show. It's just I want to talk about Bayern Munich. It has been all hands on deck, red alert, oh my God, what's happening for Bayern Munich this entire year, the entire season. And when you have a 5-1 loss to Eintracht Frankfurt on your record, I understand why break in case of emergency glass has been broken for Bayern Munich. But if you just take a step back and really look what Hansi Flick was able to do in the last 3 Champions League matches, what he was able to do since Bayern lost 5-1 against Frankfurt in the Bundesliga. They head into the middle break, getting ready for the Rückrunde. They're 4 points back. They're still the favorites, according to 538, to win the Bundesliga. And they are the second highest favored team to win the Champions League, according to 538. And I think Hansi Flick, who is, a prodigy of Jupp Heynckes, who is the last really successful manager for Bayern Munich, is showing us, and I think he will show everybody, what works at Bayern. So every single sports culture, every single work culture has certain things that work for its culture. So in the sport of basketball, if you've got a team filled with guys who are high energy, if you have a culture like the Los Angeles Lakers, where it's just unbelievably high expectations, you take it to soccer, where it's just star players all across the board. Some cultures work well when you put a star head coach in. It just elevates everything because everybody's a star and they're playing a bunch of stars week in and week out. Like Real Madrid plays Barcelona. There's other stars to combat against. There's somebody to ground these players, right? The Lakers in the NBA haven't made the playoffs in a while. That grounds them, right? The American sports tend to ground teams to where it's okay to have a fiery head coach, to elevate teams, to have a star head coach, to try to take them into the atmosphere. But what I think Bayern Munich has learned, or at least I don't think they've learned it, I think that I have learned it about Bayern, and I hope they figure it out about themselves, is that they are a club that is so unbelievably dominant, both fan base, financially, and success on the field in Germany. They are unable to be grounded by domestic competition, and they need to be grounded by a head coach. Because there's a lot of stars on this team, a lot of big heads, right? A lot of very, very wealthy players who really have no competition in the country they live in for players that are as famous, as wealthy, as well-known, as respected as players that play for Bayern Munich. That's an unbelievably beautiful thing to play for Bayern Munich in Germany. It is an honor. It's like a kingship. You're like knighted when you play for Bayern Munich. And there's a lot of people from Germany who don't like Bayern who will refuse that statement. But then why does every single player, Alexander Nubel, just the perfect example, 23-year-old captain for one of Bayern's rivals, free transfer, I'm just going to go ahead and leave and let the team strip my captaincy to go be the backup to Bayern Munich's keeper. That's what it means to play for Bayern Munich in Germany. That's what it means to wear those colors in Germany. These guys are so elevated above everybody else in their own league, in their own country that they live in, that a grounded, humbling head coach is necessary. Pep Guardiola didn't work. Kovac didn't work. These guys who are big names, big hires, don't work. Jupp Heynckes, I understand he's a big name, but he's a big name because of the grounding component he brought to Bayern Munich. He humbled that team. He humbled the team into the point where it's like, we've got to focus on us. We don't want to focus on our star power or focus on our branding and just push forward, right? And be grounded. And I think that's what Hansi Flick really brings. I don't think Bayern Munich needs to go hire a big name, a Jose Mourinho or Arsene Wenger. I don't think that these things need to be, I just don't think they need that. I think there's plenty of talent here that you don't need a big name, a big tactical genius, a guy who's just a superstar in world soccer to try to come in and add even more pressure and more spotlight to Bayern Munich. I think you need a guy like Hansi Flick who's grounded, who's good tactically, who understands how to get the best out of the players, how to develop players. And maybe he isn't the same tactical genius that Pep Guardiola is, but Pep couldn't get out of his own way in Europe with Bayern Munich. And I think that Hansi Flick's going to go out and win the Bundesliga. And by golly, if he wins the Champions League and Bayern doesn't bring him back, they would be absolutely foolish. Foolish. I think that Bayern Munich should understand that that's who they are, right? They need to be star power in the brand and on the field. And everything else needs to be grounded. Upper management needs to be grounded. Coaching needs to be grounded. Sensible, straightforward, solid decisions, and a little more loyalty too, right? Loyalty comes from guys who are grounded. Loyalty to German national players. When Bayern was clicking in 2012, 2013, when they won the treble in Germany, the Champions League was theirs, when they were consistently right there to win the Champions League. It was mainly German players. And I love Kingsley Coman. And I love these guys from all over the world that decided to play at Bayern Munich in Germany, who they think is one of the most respected clubs in the world, and you need those guys to win at a high level. Arjen Robben was a guy from the Netherlands that played on those teams. But the core of Bayern Munich needs to be German. Needs to be German. And Hansi Flick is exactly what he did. He empowered Thomas Müller, and look what's happened to Bayern. They made a little bit of a rebound. They made a little bit of a comeback. And I think that if Bayern can understand that they need a grounded head coach, they need to focus on German talent, develop a little more young talent, stop trying to pay and fix every problem. I pay to fix most problems. I love that. But you don't have to pay to fix every problem. That's what will make Bayern the most successful they can be, which is not more successful than they've already been. I mean, they're about to win 8 consecutive domestic titles, in my opinion. I think they'll make the 4-point comeback. They could potentially be another semifinalist once again in the Champions League, maybe even win the whole thing. They're fine, right? They're fine. But for them to be elite, for them to be the best that they can be, that formula they used in 2012, German-centric roster, grounded head coach, a little bit of humble, because there's enough added pressure and cockiness just from being Bayern Munich. I think that's the formula moving forward for the Bavarians. That's the formula moving forward for them. Hopefully they figure that out. But knowing Bayern Munich and Karl-Heinz and just everything they've done at the top of that organization, in the top of that club, I just got a feeling they'll try to hire a really big name, try to make a big splash, and when they don't win the Champions League, fire them. And I just don't think that that is the formula that would make Bayern Munich as successful as they can be. That'll bring an end to our show, the GSMC Soccer Podcast. I hope you really enjoyed the first episode, because I certainly enjoyed bringing it to you. We'll have episodes on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So Friday, and then Monday, and then Wednesday, and then Friday, and then Monday. You get the point. Don't need to continue on forever. But that's our schedule of our podcast release. Obviously, there'll be some changes. You know, maybe I'll have an individual vacation, or maybe there'll be news, or maybe we'll do a special podcast. All those things remain to be seen. All those things are in the future. But if you enjoyed this podcast, and if you made it all the way to this point, I'm imagining you did, please give us a follow on our social media platforms, GSMC_soccer on Twitter, the GSMC Soccer Facebook page. Please give me a follow at More Lucas. I do more than just soccer on there. I also have other sports podcasts, basketball, football, all those wonderful things. Give me a follow on there. Send a tweet, ask a question, challenge something I said, anything. We would love to hear it. Also, please rate this podcast, subscribe to this podcast on all your favorite podcasting platforms. It really helps us out here at GSMC, helps us produce great content, more consistent content, and content that you want and need for your ears. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. My name is Lucas Moore. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Soccer Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. And then one more time, please subscribe to the show, write a nice review, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you on Friday. This has been the GSMC Soccer Podcast.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.